The last transmission, the snowstorm devoured everything: sound, color, even the sky itself. On the Eastern Front, winter was not just a season. It was a living beast, swallowing men and machines without mercy. Somewhere in that endless white wilderness, the 312th Infantry Division went silent. The last radio contact, recorded at 4:27 a.m., carried only 6 words before fading into static. Hold the line! No retreat! Then, nothing. Major Heinrich Falke, a man once known for his precision and icy discipline, vanished that day, along with every soldier under his command. Nearly 800 men erased from existence. No bodies, no weapons, not even a trace of battle. When relief units reached their position, they found only tracks in the snow, fading toward the horizon like footprints, walking into another world. But how could an entire division disappear without leaving a single sign of combat? No explosions, no blood, no smoke rising in the distance. It was as if the earth itself had opened and swallowed them whole. And yet, the radios had picked up something faint, distorted transmissions days later. A voice repeating, Heimkehr, the German word for homecoming. But whose home were they talking about? Germany's, or something far older, hidden beneath the snow. Some Soviet scouts later reported finding campsites still warm, fires still burning, mugs frozen, half filled with coffee. One soldier even claimed he saw shadows moving between the trees. Not enemies, but figures walking silently in formation. When he approached, they dissolved into the fog. Were these hallucinations caused by exhaustion and frostbite? Or could it be that the 312th was still out there marching somewhere beyond the veil of our world? Falke had always been different. His men described him as calm but haunted, a commander who stared too long at the horizon, as if listening to something the rest of them couldn't hear. Days before the disappearance, he reportedly ordered his radio officer to keep one frequency open, not for German high command, but for a signal from the north. What did he mean by that? Was he expecting a transmission from allies, or from something else entirely? Witnesses from neighboring units later testified that they saw strange lights in the sky above Smolensk that night. Pale orbs moving silently, forming a pattern that resembled an eagle's wings. Some dismissed it as the aurora borealis. Others whispered that it was a sign, a call. Could Falke have interpreted it as such? Could he have believed that salvation lay not in victory, but in surrender to something beyond human comprehension? Even now, military historians debate the incident. Some argue that Falke led a desperate breakout attempt through the blizzard and perished in the cold. Others suggest mutiny, that he and his men abandoned the Reich and vanished to escape both German command and Soviet captivity. But none of those explanations answer the same question. Where did they go? If they died in the snow, why did their supplies remain untouched? Their radio systems still functional, their tracks ending abruptly as if they had stepped into thin air. Could the blizzard itself have been their executioner, or their passage? And what about that last word, homecoming? 2 soldiers who had lost everything. Could it have meant death or liberation? Was Falke leading his men toward a symbolic home, a place free from the madness of war? Or had he found something real, something buried in the frozen wilderness, a secret the war was never meant to uncover? Decades later, explorers and researchers who visited the site reported an unnatural silence. Compasses spun wildly. Batteries drained instantly. Some swore they heard whispers under the wind, voices reciting Falke's last order. Hold the line! No retreat. A command echoing through time, as if his army still obeyed somewhere just beyond the snow. Could it be that the lost battalion never died, but simply crossed into a place where war cannot reach them? Or are they still trapped, marching endlessly under an eternal storm, caught between duty and deliverance? Perhaps the real question is not where they went, but why they were taken. And if the snow remembers them, does it wait for us to follow? The frozen road. It was 3 weeks after Major Heinrich Falke and his battalion vanished when a Soviet reconnaissance unit stumbled upon something that defied every law of nature. A road made entirely of ice, stretching deep into the Smolensk forest. It shimmered like glass beneath a weak winter sun, a perfect corridor carved through the wilderness. No tools, No tire tracks, no signs of construction. It simply appeared a path of frozen perfection leading to nowhere. The men who discovered it said it didn't look like it had been built at all. The frost seemed grown, not formed by human hands. It curved with unnatural precision, as if the forest itself had parted to make way for something or someone. Temperatures that day were far below what any machine could endure, yet the surface was smooth, clear, and pulsing faintly with blue light beneath the surface. One of the soldiers placed his hand on it. He claimed the ice was warm. Scattered along that spectral road were the traces of the 312th Division, dog tags frozen inside the ice. Rifles standing upright like gravestones, personal effects half embedded as if swallowed by time. But there were no bodies, no blood, no signs of combat. Just a silent suggestion of a column of men who had passed here and never returned. Was this the aftermath of the storm that consumed them? Or had Falke's men followed this strange path willingly, marching deeper into the cold, abandoning the world of the living for reasons no one could explain? When Soviet command received the report, they immediately sealed the area. The soldiers who found the road were relocated and never reassigned to the front. Within weeks, every mention of the event disappeared from military logs. The place was marked as restricted for meteorological study. But why would meteorologists need soldiers armed with rifles guarding a frozen road that led to nowhere? 4 decades. Silence. Until the collapse of the Soviet Union. Then, in the flood of declassified documents, a few fragile pages surfaced, yellowed waters, and marked with a codenamed project, Wyspy Faji Whitepat. According to those files, the road had been observed at least 3 times between 1943 and 1950. Each time, it appeared during periods of extreme cold, and each time it extended further north as if it were growing. Instruments placed near it malfunctioned. Compasses spun aimlessly, and those who stood too long on its edge reported hearing marching footsteps beneath the ice. Was the white path a natural phenomenon? A mirage, born of fatigue and frostbite? Or could it be something ancient, a relic of a world older than ours, reacting to the presence of human conflict? Some researchers suggested the possibility of seismic activity or magnetic fields creating optical illusions, but one Soviet scientist, Dr. Anatoly Kurovi, wrote something chilling in the margin of his final report before he disappeared in 1952. The path does not reflect the light. It absorbs it. What kind of ice absorbs light? Even more disturbing were the notes that followed sketches of what looked like figures beneath the surface. Dazans, Avdom, frozen in mid-step. Their faces blurred by the frost, their uniforms barely visible under translucent layers. Could these be Falke's men, trapped forever beneath the white path, marching in silence toward a destination beyond human comprehension? Villagers near Smolensk spoke of the singing road on windless nights. They claimed you could hear a low hum echoing from the forest, rhythmic, like boots striking the ground in perfect unison. The sound would fade as dawn approached, leaving behind a haunting emptiness that lingered in the air. Some said the road was alive, that it appeared only to those who were lost, calling them forward with the promise of warmth and never releasing them again. What if Falke had found it first? What if he believed that road was salvation, a way home through the endless winter? Could Heimkehr, the word from his final transmission, have been a clue? Maybe it wasn't a call to Germany, but to whatever awaited at the end of that glacial path. The deeper you look, the stranger it becomes. Declassified maps show faint markings, an extension of the white path, leading north into areas where no human settlement ever existed. Was it just ice? Or was it a trail to something buried beneath centuries of snow? An entrance, perhaps, to a forgotten realm frozen under the war-torn earth. Every question about the frozen road leads to another, colder mystery. Why did the Soviets classify it as a weapon project? Why are all photographic records destroyed in 1951? And most importantly, if the white path was truly a doorway, where did it lead? And who or what built it? Today, satellite images show that same region blanketed in dense forests and permafrost. But some winter nights, explorers claim to see a faint glimmer, a line of light cutting through the trees. Is it the road reappearing, waiting for those who still listen to Falke's last command? No retreat? Perhaps the frozen road was never meant for the living, Perhaps it was built for those who refused to die. So tell me, if you found a road that promised escape from the horrors of war, glowing softly beneath the snow, would you follow it? The letters that shouldn't exist in the spring of 1951. 8 years after the 312th Infantry Division vanished in the snows of the Eastern Front, a brown paper parcel appeared on the doorstep of a small apartment in Hamburg. It was unmarked except for a single word scrawled across the back in fading ink. Homecoming! Inside, wrapped in brittle newspaper, were 3 letters. Their envelopes sealed with red wax bearing an insignia no one recognized a snowflake enclosed in a perfect circle. The handwriting was unmistakable. It belonged to Major Heinrich Falke, the very man whose name had been carved into the memorials of the fallen since 1945. At first, the widow, Elizabeth Falke, thought it was a cruel prank. Her husband had vanished, along with nearly 800 men. His remains were never found. But as she unfolded the first letter, her hands began to tremble. The ink was fresh, not age. The postmark was clear. The date, however, made no sense. March 17, 1947, 4 years after his disappearance. In that letter, Heinrich wrote, "My dearest, we found peace beyond the white horizon. Tell them we did not lose. We simply left the war behind." The second letter contained coordinates, impossible to read clearly, but roughly corresponding to the Smolensk region, the same place where his battalion had vanished. And in the third, he wrote something even more unsettling. The snow remembers everything. It listens. It keeps us warm. Experts were called. Handwriting specialists confirmed the letters were authentic. The unique slant of Falke's F, the precise weight of his pen strokes, all identical to official military documents written before 1943. Even the ink composition matched wartime German supplies. Yet the letters were written after his death. How could that be? Was it a fabrication? Some elaborate Soviet psychological operation meant to sow fear and confusion during the tense years of the Cold War? If so, why target a widow? Why not the German government? And how could the forgers have replicated Falke's handwriting with such microscopic accuracy when no samples were public? The mystery deepened when a historian studying the case noticed something unusual. The paper, it bore a faint watermark only visible under ultraviolet light, a snowflake inside a circle. The same symbol carved on one of the ice rifles recovered from the site of the so-called frozen road. Coincidence or deliberate connection? If Falke's letters were real, it would mean that somewhere beyond the Eastern Front, he and his men had survived, perhaps in isolation, perhaps somewhere far stranger. Could the white horizon he described have been literal? A place hidden beyond the frost, where the rules of time no longer applied. One of the investigators, a postal historian named Otto Run, made a startling claim before his sudden disappearance in 1953. Said he traced the stamps back to a small post office in East Prussia, one that had been destroyed in 1944. The building didn't exist anymore. But according to the registry logs, 3 pieces of outgoing mail were recorded there in 1947, all addressed to Hamburg. The sender's name, H. Falke. How could mail be sent from a post office that no longer existed? Some say the letters were found, not delivered, recovered by Soviet agents, exploring the region of Smolensk, and later leaked through shadow networks in divided Germany. Others whisper something even darker, that the letters were not delivered at all, but returned, that they were sent from the other side. In the years that followed, the widow refused interviews. She locked the letters away in a box, claiming that each time she read them, the temperature in her apartment dropped and she could hear faint footsteps outside her door, boots crunching softly in the snow, even in the middle of summer. When she died in 1971, the letters disappeared again. Some believe they were taken by collectors of wartime relics. Others insist they were seized by intelligence officers, but a few copies of their contents survived handwritten transcriptions now stored in private archives. And every time one surfaces, strange coincidences follow. One researcher claimed his typewriter froze solid while copying the words. Another said his tape recorder captured a low whisper between his own breaths, a voice repeating, "We did not lose." Was this merely the echo of grief? The delusion of those haunted by war? Or proof that Falke's words were never meant for the living, that they were messages sent across a threshold we cannot understand? And the greatest mystery remains. Why only 3 letters? Were they the only ones written? Or the only ones that made it through? If Falke truly found peace beyond the white horizon, what else did he see there? Did he find redemption? Or something else entirely? Something so profound it erased 800 men from history. The letters shouldn't exist. Yet, they do. And their message, we simply left the war behind, still echoes like a riddle through time. So, what do you think? Are they proof of survival? Or a warning from the dead? The Soviet files when the Soviet archives began to open in the early 1990s. Historians expected to find evidence of Cold War espionage, lost technologies, maybe even proof of secret nuclear projects. But no one anticipated a folder marked simply Operation Snegvoy Volk, Snow Wolf. Inside were a series of typewritten pages, many heavily censored with thick red ink. The surviving lines told a story so strange it seemed impossible. Reports of armed men in outdated German uniforms, sighted deep in the forests of Belarus in the winter of 1956. The witnesses were not random villagers or rumor. They were trained Soviet patrolmen, and their statements were remarkably consistent. They claimed that the men spoke German, not modern, but the clipped dialect of the 1940s. Their rifles were old, their helmets dented and frost. When the Soviet patrols tried to make contact, the strangers didn't shoot, didn't surrender. They simply turned and walked into the mist, their boots leaving no prints behind. At first, command dismissed these reports as hallucinations, the product of exhaustion, fear, or perhaps the lingering madness of a war that had ended barely a decade earlier. But then came the photographs. Grainy, black and white images taken by military reconnaissance units, figures moving through the fog, their outlines blurred, their faces hidden by frost-covered goggles. They appeared human, but something about their proportions seemed wrong. Their shoulders were too straight, their posture too synchronized, as if every man were a mirror image of the next. When enlarged analysts noticed something chilling. The insignia on their sleeves wasn't Nazi, nor Soviet, nor of any known military order. It resembled a circle enclosing a snowflake, the very same symbol that had appeared on Falke's mysterious letters years earlier. Coincidence? Or a sign that the 312th Division, Falke's lost battalion, had somehow survived, transformed into something neither dead nor alive? One Soviet Colonel S. notes described a phenomena observed during a later investigation, a sudden drop in temperature, localized within a 20-meter radius, occurring whenever the patrol neared the area of the supposed sightings. Compass needles spun uncontrollably, and radio frequencies filled with a steady rhythmic pulse, like marching footsteps transmitted through static. Could the sound have been interference from nearby military installations? Possibly. Yet the same pulse was recorded 200 kilometers away at precisely the same moment. Local villagers told their own stories, passed down in whispers. Tales of the white regiment that appeared during the fiercest snowstorms. Entire families reported hearing songs drifting through the blizzard, German marching hymns from another century, echoing through the night. When the storms cleared, strange footprints could be found in the snow, arranged in perfect formation, leading nowhere. Soviet authorities dismissed these accounts publicly but quietly ordered the forest region to be quarantined. Declassified memos mentioned phrases like high radiation anomalies and psychological contamination, though neither was ever proven. And then, in 1962, the files were suddenly reclassified and sealed again, this time under direct orders from Moscow. Why? What could be so threatening about ghost stories from the forest? A few leaked photographs survived, passed hand to hand among collectors and historians. One image in particular drew attention. A close-up of a soldier's frozen face, eyes open, staring blankly into the camera. When examined digitally decades later, analysts noticed something unsettling reflected in his pupils, a landscape of ice that didn't match the terrain of Belarus. Was the photograph altered? Or was it a glimpse of where these men truly were? A place that existed somewhere else, accessible only through the endless snow. Some researchers theorized that Falke's unit, cut off from both German and Soviet forces, may have discovered a hidden military experiment, perhaps even a weapon designed to manipulate climate or perception. Could project Weisspad. The White Path have been an early attempt at dimensional warfare, tearing a rift between worlds. If so, what if the 312th Division never died, but simply stepped through that rift? Others argue that the soldiers seen in the forest were not Falke's men, but something born from them, echoes or repeating the last moments of their existence in an endless loop. Could trauma itself linger, replaying through time like a broken record of suffering? By the time the Soviet Union collapsed, most of those who worked on Operation Snowwolf were dead or missing. The few surviving pages referenced an unknown phenomenon labeled the white resonance. According to one note, it was a harmonic field triggered by extreme human despair. What did that mean? Did Falke's despair, his refusal to surrender, somehow create a resonance strong enough to pull his men out of history? Or is it possible that the White Battalion still exists, waiting beyond the frost, watching us repeat their mistakes from the other side of the snow? The last line of the file, typed in fading ink, reads simply, "They are not gone. They are observing." So ask yourself, who's watching when the first snow falls? And what if the storm that takes you isn't just weather, but an invitation? The return of the White Battalion in the late autumn of 1989. As the winds of change swept across a crumbling Eastern Europe, a retired Soviet colonel named Mikhail Orlov gave an interview that few believed and fewer ever forgot. Sitting in a smoky cafe in Kulin, he claimed to have met a man in East Prussia who called himself Heinrich Falke. At first, Orlov thought it was a cruel joke. Falke, the infamous commander of the vanished 312th Division, had been missing for over 45 years. But the man who sat across from him, wearing a long gray coat and carrying a tattered field satchel, looked no older than 50. His posture was perfect. His voice calm, measured, almost rehearsed. When asked how he had survived, the man smiled faintly and said only one thing before disappearing into the crowd outside. "We never lost the war. We just refused to keep fighting." Orlov tried to follow, but the man seemed to dissolve into the mist rising from the cobblestone streets. There were no footprints, no trace. Only a faint scent of frost that lingered in the air long after he was gone. A few months later, a team of archaeologists excavating an old battlefield near the Masurian lakes uncovered something extraordinary: a perfect circle of rifles, standing upright in the frozen soil, their barrels pointed outward as if defending against an unseen enemy. At the center lay a German officer's cap, untouched by time, its insignia preserved beneath layers of translucent ice. Carbon dating revealed something impossible. The surrounding ice had formed in the late 1960s, more than 2 decades after the battalion had vanished. Scientists were baffled. How could the ice be younger than the relics trapped within it? Word of the discovery spread quietly through military and academic circles. But before the public could learn more, the site was abruptly sealed off. The official reason given was environmental instability. Yet, rumors suggested otherwise, that something beneath the ice was still moving. Witnesses spoke of strange lights flickering beneath the surface at night, of muffled sounds echoing from below, rhythmic, like footsteps marching in perfect unison. When researchers drilled into the ice, their instruments failed, and the temperature in the excavation tents reportedly dropped by 10 degrees in seconds. One man claimed he heard a voice through his radio headset whisper, "No retreat." Was this a haunting echo of the past? Or had the White Battalion truly returned, not as men, but as something reborn within the cold itself? Some historians theorize that Falke and his men had discovered an ancient phenomenon, a temporal fold created by the extreme magnetic and emotional conditions of the Eastern Front. Others proposed something far stranger, that the battalion had willingly stepped into a realm beyond time, a dimension where war never ends and soldiers march eternally beneath the snow. But if that were true, how could Falke appear again, decades later, unchanged? Did he escape that realm, or had he never truly left it? Could he exist in both places at once? One foot in our world, one in the eternal white? In 1992, after the fall of the Soviet Union, a series of classified East German documents surfaced briefly on the black market before disappearing again. Among them was a report referencing the returners. A group of individuals sighted across East Prussia claiming to be survivors of the 312th Division. Their fingerprints matched no records, and their blood tests revealed an anomaly. Traces of unknown proteins consistent with prolonged exposure to sub-zero temperatures, yet no signs of frostbite or cell damage. How could human beings survive such conditions for decades? And why did they all vanish again within months of being documented? The last known sighting came from a railway worker near Gdansk in 1994. who swore he saw a line of soldiers standing on the tracks in the early morning fog. They wore white uniforms and carried lanterns that emitted a cold blue light. When he approached, they turned their heads in perfect unison and disappeared. Some say the White Battalion still roams the borderlands between Poland and Belarus, appearing only during blizzards. Others claim they are not ghosts, but guardians protecting the frozen threshold to whatever lies beyond the white path. And then there's the darker theory that the snow itself remembers them, reshaping their essence every generation, returning them to remind mankind of the futility of war. Perhaps Falke never sought victory or escape. Perhaps he sought transcendence. So what did he find beyond that endless horizon of white? A sanctuary, a punishment, or something that waits, still watching, still listening, in the silence between falling snowflakes. And if the snow remembers, will it one day release them, or will it call us next?